I wanted to welcome all of you who are here and all of the people who are watching through the stream, and really excited to be here with Renee. And I wanted to provide a context for this evening and talk a little bit about who Rush Arts is, its impact on the communities it serves, and its impact on global art, on the global art scene, as well as a very brief understanding of how the market for African American and African descendant visual culture has become the most actively sought work in the world at this time. And then I want to go right into talking to Renee about her relationship with Rush, but more importantly also about her work. So for those of you who are unfamiliar with Rush Arts, it was founded in 1995 by Danny Simmons, visual artist and community builder, media mogul Russell Simmons, and Joseph Rev Run Simmons of the legendary hip hop group Run DMC. And the mission was really to fill in the gaps in exhibitions and education opportunities for all people of color who had been denied access and exposure beyond their studios and their communities. And in addition, Rush Art Galleries made a commitment to foster and nurture emerging artists as well as curators. There are not many opportunities for anybody's first time. And all of us have had first times. And first times in any aspect of our lives is a critical moment in our development, our sense of self-worth and value. So providing such an opportunity was really, really a tremendous gift to the community of artists and curators and collectors as well. Then I want to talk a little bit about Rush Arts in terms of their impact on the art world today. Through the visionary curation of artist and curator Derek Adams, Rush Arts in Chelsea and the Corridor Gallery in Brooklyn became these vibrant spaces that not only nurtured creativity, but also brought together so many different communities of people that might, and that's the nice thing about art, it always brings a divergent group of people, different backgrounds, sensibilities, religions, economics, backgrounds. It was just a very exciting and vibrant community, notwithstanding the wonderful parties on the top of Corridor Gallery in Brooklyn, which were legendary. But what's most important is that they provided a launching pad for aesthetically diverse artists from North America and Africa. And I think that's an important point. They were intellectually and aesthetically diverse artists. At the end in the 1990s, Josh Wainwright established the National Black Fine Art Show, which was the first fair to show, art fair. He was ahead of the game, the first art fair to bring together artists from all over the world of African descent. And it was on Lafayette Street, and art dealers from all over the country came, and they brought local and regional and national and international artists of African descent under one roof. And artists, collectors, curators, museum professionals ascended upon this place every year. And it was one of the high points of New York art world life, because it was also about community. And community is the foundation and the underpinning of everything you see on the walls, what artists do, who they're talking to, and what Rush has been doing and continues to do. It's all intertwined. It's not compartmentalized. And I think that's the point that is really important to understand. Rush inadvertently evolved into a cultural arbiter that played a pivotal role in shaping the trajectory of Black visual culture. And many of the artists who hung on their walls have become some of the most actively sought artists in the world today. And early in many of their careers, their first shows, or some of their first few shows, were at Rush. Renee was one of those artists. For people who were new to collecting African American art in particular, there is a linear aesthetic pedigree and history that you must know to really understand them and the contemporary artists today. Because everybody stands on someone's shoulder, and these other artists and historians have opened the door, just as Rush has opened the door, the floodgates, for so many different artists and curators. The reason why work by American artists of African descent and artists from throughout the African diaspora have been actively sought is because they are filling the historic gaps in various art collections. And it's because of and it's because of cultural workers and artists and curators and collectors who have been committed to upholding and nurturing the development of Black visual culture that we are here today to celebrate and talk about it. And so some of the naysayers out here who is still, and I hear this all the time, that this is a market trend. Well, this market is just scratching the surface, because there is an untapped reservoir of artists of African descent who are creating intelligent, thought-provoking, strong, meritorious work. I am really happy to be here, with Renee, and your work has, redefined notions of beauty and power, contributing to a broader dialogue on race and gender. And I just wanted to ask you, how did the changing landscape of the art world in the 1990s affect your ability as a Black woman and photographer to think about or exhibit your work in galleries and institutions, and being one of Rush's artists?
Right. I don't know, actually. I just do the work. So it's like all of that's like a lot to like have to be thinking about and trying to do work and do work that I think is relevant and pertinent. So I like to just basically live my life as an artist. I always say the idea comes from here, from the heart, from my soul. And then it goes to my brain for the execution. Just go to the brain when it's necessary to be able to, like I said, execute, market, all of that. So to your question, it's like I don't really think about that too much. I just keep going.
So
and
let
I
me
just
ask you
keep
about your
doing the
feeling.
work.
Yeah. Like, not what you think.
Right.
Let's talk about what we feel, because that's the core.
That's the essence
That's the
of art.
essence of it all.
I mean, for me, the creativity comes from here.
How has community shaped the way you feel about yourself in the world, and all the things that come to and through you that ultimately touch your heart and then become, in turn, a photograph, a concept, or an idea?
It's a reaction most of the time. One of the things that I've always been invested in is I wanted to conflate the stereotypes that have been laid on Black people since, 400 years of whatever slavery, of white supremacy. And I never really drank that Kool-Aid as a Black person. So I've always been like, wait, no, I'm going to attack this head on, and I'm going to talk about this head on and not hold back, because I feel as Black folks, we have sometimes undervalued ourselves. We haven't given ourselves enough credit. We believe what the colonizer has told us.
Right.
And even to the fact of this, as an example, I'm constantly telling people it's not dreads, it's locks.
Right.
And they're like, what do you mean? And I'm like, well, it's the Brits that put the dread in front of the lock. Okay. And when did they do that? They did that in the 1940s during the Mau Mau War in Kenya. Right. And obviously the word dread contains a huge negative vibration. And that was done specifically to undermine the Mau Mau, who were the freedom fighters fighting for their freedom in Kenya from the Brits. So there's things that we don't even know. I go damn, Bob Marley didn't even know that. You know what I'm saying? I want to I don't know, go to the grave or go through some portal and be like, yo, dude, like, that's like, you gotta pull that back. You can't have these people saying this. Like, why would we be calling our own hair dreadful? You know? So it's, for me, it's just like, it's about bringing out like all of these different points that I think get swept under the carpet and nobody remembers. And, you know, nobody does the history. I mean, I like history. I like knowing why things are happening, what the cause of it is, so on and so forth. And that's, I think, the place, for the most part, from where I create. Now, my newer work, I would say to you, it's still coming from here, but it's not necessarily dealing with all of those heavy topics. So I'm more into fractals, and it's like sacred geometry, and creating this world in which Black and brown people can thrive in. My own little world, but executed, you know, as photographs and as installations and as projection mapping, as I've recently gotten into.
Now, I wanted to go back to asking about what happened, and you know, when you got to Rush, did you meet Danny someplace? Did he, you know, did you have this organic conversation, and or did he just say, "Oh, you're a photographer? Oh, that's great. Let me see your work." Or, "I've seen your work. I'd love you to show." Or, "Hey," I mean, what did he say? What happened?
Yeah.
Why not? Come on.
I didn't meet Renee first as a photographer. I knew she was a photographer. I met her as a curator. What the second show that we had at Rush, Renee did a show called One, and it was so many artists that she introduced me to that I had never met. You see, I came to the art world from social work, and I opened Rush out of need. Not being deep in the art world, I said, we need these spaces for our artists. It wasn't that I had art history background, none of that. And so I counted on people like Renee to show me what was there. And Renee opened me up to so many artists, Donald Wadito. There was so many great artists in this show. And then I started learning, and meeting Renee and I became friends. We was hanging out, we would go to parties together, this, that, and the other. But I came to Renee as somebody who was really a teacher to me and to Rush, because Rush had just opened, and there was no place like Rush because it was open. It wasn't like the other Black galleries. It was like, come here, let's do what you do. It was like, what are people doing? You can do it here. You know, and that's basically what Rush was, a space. You know, I figured give people space, they can thrive and they can do what they do. That's why Derek did so much as a curator. I curated a bunch of shows, but Derek knew the young artists. Renee knew the more established artists. So they brought a lot to Rush. I was just a catalyst, really, to allow people to do what they do. And that's what I'm still doing nowadays, because, you know, I always want to do my own work. And so, you know, matter of fact, Renee had an apartment over in Chelsea, not Chelsea, in Soho, and I used to love to go down there because Soho was new to me. Everybody else was running around Soho for 20 years. I was running around Brooklyn.
Right.
I was running around Brooklyn. So these people like Renee showed me the art world.
And also collectors, younger collectors, you must know that you're going to automatically, and if you don't, you should simultaneously become bibliophiles. You have to buy books, and you must, you must. And the thing is that I always encourage collectors to, if they're opening a book, do not feel compelled to start reading it on page 1 all the way through. Don't do that. You're a collector. Let's start with what's in the heart and your eyes. Open the book and just look at the pictures. Pay attention to what you like, what feels good to you. Pay attention to what you don't like, and then start reading where you're interested. You will eventually get through the whole book, but you're going to develop your own expertise based on your interest. Do not listen to people who are saying you've got to do this when you're starting. Follow what you are passionate about, and also work with more than one dealer, because dealers have inventories to move and they have their own aesthetic view of the universe. You should work with different dealers because they all have something to offer. But if you feel comfortable with just one person, that's fine. But if you go to another gallery, You can still ask the dealer that you're comfortable with to help you to get a piece because you feel comfortable with them. Doesn't mean you're going to spend more money. You just need to be informed, but follow what you like. It's just follow what you like. You're looking and you're feeling.
The whole thing now, I think it's like all about branding.
Yeah, it's all about branding I mean, some collectors are buying for investment purposes and they're just buying a name and they're going down the list and they couldn't tell you anything about the artist. They don't care.
No.
You have other people who are decorating their offices and their homes and they start out from that perspective. You have other people who love the social dynamic of collecting. And that's one of the things at Rush, it was a unique environment. It wasn't sterile. It wasn't cold. You would walk in and people were warm and they'd greet you. You'd go to the openings and you'd meet all sorts of people. And it was just like the vibe. It was really a great hit place to be. And it wasn't, you didn't have the feeling that, okay, we're going to give you this attention for this amount of time because we need that red dot on here now. If the red dot happened, it was great. It was still, it wasn't, there wasn't the same kind of energy that exists in most galleries. And yet a lot of business did take place there, probably because of that. But, there are different types of collectors who love the social dynamic of going.
Well, it gives you a social life.
It gives them a social life. They get to meet people they normally would never meet. And then other people just love to research stuff, Well, I just want to kind of dovetail on something that you said that's really, really important. It sort of goes back to history. And you said that there was a need, there was a necessity for a space. There is a tradition, a historic tradition of necessity when it comes to Black visual culture. And that tradition of necessity actually begins with James Porter, because when he was a young artist, he was exposed to all the artists who are part of the Harlem Renaissance that are currently at the show at the Metropolitan Museum of Art, and there are some artists that are here too in this at the sale. This is actually a really great. I have to commend you, Nigel, and your team. This is really a good show. But the point is that he asked, why haven't these artists received any critical attention or acclaim? And he was told, because Black people haven't been in America long enough to have a visual history.
Oh, yeah.
So when he went to graduate school, in 1943, he graduated, and his master's thesis was Modern Negro Art, which is the current book that exists. And that book came out as a part of this tradition of necessity in the Black community. That was the first African-American art history book. Then David Driscoll, who was his mentee and his student, because he had started the art department at Howard University, not Driscoll, but Porter. And David Driscoll, I think in 1976, had the exhibition and the book, 200 years, 2 centuries of Black American art. And that book was also a part of the tradition of necessity. And he was saying, building on Porter's work, well, not only do we have a history, but we've been here for 200 years. These histories and these connections of traditions of necessity and the way that communities come together is the springboard for what the market is today.